Good day, everyone. Welcome to
Hello.
Wheels Up Live. I'm ID Bound,
I'm Felix.
and we're glad you all could join us for a new episode here. And as always, we're going to start with the news of the week. And leading off was, of course, the Microsoft Flight Simulator Asobo developer stream that happened earlier this week. As most of you know, sim update 15, which is likely to be the last major update before the release of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, has been delayed again by a little bit more. Although I think, based on what I heard from Jorg and Seb and Martial, that there are good and valid reasons for that, mostly related to, I think, working through some of the last cluster of frustrating items from their perspective in terms of little bugs
Yes.
or things that are maybe not CTD showstoppers, but they're frustrations, including, I think, one that a lot of us recognize, which is the problem of bleed through of textures
Yes.
underlying airports in DX12. I believe that's on the list. It's funny because I have the SU15 beta up, and I can't remember if I've noticed it or not. So maybe they fixed it, and that's great because it's not annoying me. Sometimes it's those kinds of bug fixes. But there's a whole stream of things in there, and I know one of the ones that's really interesting is that Seb was talking about how they are working very hard to improve the memory allocation functions in long haul flights in particular, so that you do not experience uh, significant stutters, hopefully no stutters, on final coming in as airports are loading and all of those little
Yes.
details happen.
Yes.
And he mentioned that, I believe he said, he has 7 computers that he kind of pointed to behind himself that he runs these long haul flights on to test all of these functions. And he got into some nitty gritty about it that was actually quite interesting in terms of allocation block timing and things that probably mean a lot to programmers, but which for us normal users meant we're trying to clear this problem up.
Sure.
And I think that that's tells you a lot about maybe where their head is right now in terms of 2020, which is that they'd like to leave it in a spot that's more than good enough,
Sure.
and that a lot of the things that they're working on presumably are things that they're either advancing in 2024 or even maybe pushing back from 2024. We don't know for sure. The only other thing that they mentioned with respect to 2024, and this will come as a shock to no one, is that the Beluga that was featured in the trailer is being developed by Anybuild. Well, I'm shocked. I mean, I'm
I'm so
really
shocked.
shocked. I mean, I'm
I'm so
blown. I
shocked.
mean,
Well,
it's
I
just
will. It's funny though. I think that speaking of that beluga is, I think some people found in the EFB of there was something. It was either the A320, the Neo that they were supposed to do in beta. That they found some A330 files, and we were like, "Is that the secret project?" And I remember everybody, the Anybills Discord was going
right,
wild with, "Oh my god, it's an
right.
A330!" And it seems like that maybe this was an allusion to this Beluga XL, because the Beluga XL is an A330 derivative and not a
Yeah.
A300 derivative. So
Well, for all of you who are excited about the Beluga but haven't tried it out in X-Plane 12 or 11, if you don't have it, just be aware that there's not going to be a lot of VNAV friendly stuff in there. Going to have to work out a little bit.
yeah,
Going to have to work out a little bit.
yeah.
It's a fun little. It's an interesting plane, very cool looking, and
Little plane. I like that you were
yeah,
going to say little
a little
plane.
plane. Right? It's a
Yeah,
giant plane. But
yeah,
what I was going to say was, one of the things that was implied in the 2024 trailer was, maybe it's part of more of their mission approach
sure.
in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, and we'll see where that pans out. I know there are a lot of people, I think, who are excited about the notion of missions. Um,
Myself, I am
yeah, I know
actually.
you are, and I think that it's another way to bring a potentially new group of simmers into Microsoft Flight Simulator by offering a mission approach to the simulator. Maybe there will be DLC too. Who knows?
I mean, I can remember when I played it FSX. I think it was limited options or out of options. It was one where you were in this 737 NG and you had a dual engine flame out over, I forget where. It was somewhere in like
over Macho Grande.
No, it was no, not Macho Grande. No, it was somewhere in the Java Sea or something like that, and
Yeah.
you basically had to it was more predicated on like understanding how airplanes collide and everything. It was a really cool mission, right?
Yeah.
Dual engine flame out, as at a height, you got to calculate your glide speed. I love that kind of stuff. I'm more hoping that like some of these missions you can do, let's say with a VAT sim, maybe not integration, but like online. So like you do the mission, right? So let's say you do a helicopter. So you're going to fly VFR, you're going to do all the things, you can make the call outs and kind of add that extra level. So that's kind of more of what I'm hoping for from the mission standpoint, is kind of like that kind of full on immersion, right? So
Yeah.
But as far as the I guess as far as the update itself goes, that I mean, we knew the product was going to sunset in the year 2024, and the next product is 2024, and I know they plan on releasing it in 2024.
Yeah.
So I think we were all expecting that, SU-15, the reason it's taking so long is they want to not necessarily maybe not support it anymore, but that this is going to be kind of the final tranche of like improvements or additions to the sim, and everything beyond this is probably going to be like bug fixing and back patching, or maybe integrations of some other features from the new sim into the previous as much as they can. But yeah, I think this is kind of like the sunset of this product, and now we're going to move on into the next sim, which by the way is still atypical of a Microsoft thing, because back when this was going on, from about, I want to say FS95 or FS98, they were every 2 years. They were making a new sim every 2 years there. So this is actually still
until they didn't.
Yeah, until they waited, for 15 years to make a new one, and then. But anyway, the point still stands that this is still atypical, that they went a lot longer than they had previous on a platform. So.
Yeah, and I think part of what we heard in this developer stream too was more hints about 2024 as well. So, for example, one of the things they mentioned was they have something 200 terabytes of new data from Bing that they're processing now. And we know based on the presentation they made last year that there will be less data and other information stored directly on your computer. You'll be working with more cloud-based items. And I think the implication in there was that this new data that they have, that presumably they're also running from Bing, or that they'll also be running their, Black Shark things on it and so on from an AutoGen perspective. They didn't say that, but one would assume that if they're quote processing it.
Yeah.
Is that, more than 4 years have probably passed since they've had an update of data that big, would be my guess. They have done a bunch of photogrammetry updates and other updates during this period, the world updates. But the implication there is this is a big set of data, and as we saw in their presentation last year, there's going to be more terrain detail. I mean, there's just going to be some enhancements in here. And honestly, in the world of computing, the AI assistants that they might be relying on to help them accomplish some of these things, because we know they were using that in the first place to do the AutoGen, which is pretty damn good. One could see that 24 could actually be a pretty big step forward from that perspective, while hopefully not destroying the compatibility element with the add-ons that we have. And I would hope that that's nothing like that is ever seamless, but hopefully it won't be a train wreck either. So they seem pretty sensitive to that. I mean, when you listen to Jorg and you listen to Seb, I think that compared to where they were 4 years ago, they're listening a lot more to others. They may not be giving you everything you want. You're not going to get the in 2020, you're never going to get some open weather from Medio Blue that's going to let you do whatever. That's not going to happen. They may never open the camera system in 2020, but in 2024, maybe we see already their planned weather enhancements, and that's possible that the part of that could be more information that would allow for better weather radar without actually interfering with the Medio Blue data. And you could also see a scenario in which they have a camera API. So we'll see what happens. But given the number of extra teams that they've also been working with, whether it's AnyBills, Working Title, Gaia, Orbex, whomever, all of which they mentioned in the stream, we know that they're hearing from more quarters than they did initially. And it seems like that may all inure to our benefit. So I think that was there was a lot going on in that dev stream. It was kind of long. You had to sort of pick out the little tidbits, but I felt like they were giving us some things in there that sounded very promising for all of us, frankly. Okay, so one of the things that has also happened this week is or in the past 2 weeks, is we have had some X-Plane 12 development X-Plane 12 development announcements coming from a couple of key developers there, and one of which is Tolis.
Oh yeah, Tolis.
And Tolis has announced that their next plane is an A330. Are you shocked?
I am not shocked.
Nobody's shocked.
Nobody's shocked. Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's a little annoying that they didn't want to do the A3 4300, which is kind of still in the A340 vein. But there's also a sales aspect to it. But then again, we're on X-Plane, so what does a sales aspect look like on X-Plane anyway? So
it's a good question.
They're doing so from what I've seen from this is it's going to be the A330 CEOs and the Neo. Don't know which one's going to come first. Don't know which one's going to come last.
Or maybe they come together, which is
maybe they all
kind of how they've done some of these before too.
And so it's the 330 CO, so that would be the 200 and 300, and then that's the Neo, which is the 800 and the 900. The Neo, for whatever, like the Delta likes it, maybe. Delta likes it. I don't know. So some airlines like it. Some airlines are like, man, I'd rather have an A350. And again, on the A330, I mean, X-Plane 12, we still don't have 12.1. So I still I'm not using it. I know you're not using it. 12.1 is kind of this supposed this next benchmark.
Right. Or what I like to call it, what X-Plane 12 probably should have been when they released it in November of 2022 now.
Yeah. So exactly. And that's kind of the point there too. So, I mean, I didn't see any pricing on there. I would expect that it's going to be similar pricing to their A346, which is $90, I think.
Yeah.
You can get it for $90.
Yeah.
I have it. Listen, we can talk crap about X-Plane all we want. I like the Tolis products. They make a good product.
And Tolis makes a very good product.
Quite frankly, they make the best performing products on
X-Plane.
By far and away. I mean, I've gotten like 90, 100 FPS in the Tolis products, and they don't look bad either, especially since they've done some of the visual. I mean, they could.
They're not great, but they're okay.
Exactly.
But then again, honestly, most of the things in X-Plane 12, they look okay. Like if you do, even if you're pretty good at modeling and texturing, they generally, about the best you're going to get is it looks okay.
Yeah, and I think that's, and I think a perfect example is the Challenger. I won't get into that, but I think that's a perfect example of how X-Plane itself, just in my opinion, it may be the best flight model, whatever. That's cool, okay. But
it is the most. It looks a little. Yeah, I understand your point, but that's. I do think it's limitations of X-Plane. I will say that what a Challenger shows you is what's possible, and that's a lot is possible. With these planes, if you're willing to do the work. And I think Tolis actually is one of those developers that does like to try to work to that level. Maybe they're not quite hot start in terms of some of the gory details, but they really have done a lot of work. And I mean, look, they did one of the things that I think everybody wishes was better on almost every single add-on plane was their save state
Oh my gosh, I
is
was going to say that. So
fantastic.
dude, you must have read my mind, because their
So
save
good.
state is the best. It's the best save state in all of flight simulation. There's a bar. You could literally do 11-hour long haul and
Right.
not even have to worry. You
Right.
can go to sleep.
Everything's
you can
good.
You could take a trip. You could take a whole trip
Right. Exactly.
and not even have to worry, because if it crashes, you'll just go right back to where it crashed and you'll be fine. You'll get to finish out your flight. Hopefully, it wasn't like 2 hours in. Maybe hopefully it's like 10 hours in.
Well, nobody wants their flight to crash anyway. But I'll make another argument. It is a great tool if you just want to train one thing over and over again. Set yourself up, do that landing 20 more times. When I first got X-Plane 11 and I got the TOLUS, that's what I did. I mean,
so you just loaded up, yeah.
I just loaded it up and kept landing. I'm going to do this landing again. I'm going to do this landing again. Each one was worse than the last, but I'm going to do it again.
It's going to get it till you get it. One of them's going to be good.
Right. One of them's going to be good, and I'll be like, okay, I'm done for the day. It's like the guy who practices putting. He says, well, I'm gonna make 1,000 putting, but in the end, it's like I sunk 2 or 3 putts in a row. Okay, I'm done. It's not going to get any better than that. But I mean, listen, I have FSI panel that does that beautifully as well in MSFS, and I strongly recommend it for people who want to try that. But the way TOLUS has set it up, it's a piece of cake. I love that.
It's super easy. It is.
Now, TOLUS has partnered with another developer to help them update a product that they've already made, which is the Flight Factor A350. But in other news this week, Flight Factor itself has something for us.
Yay!
And here it is. And, Felix, I have to admit, I've not been following this as closely as you have, so I'm going to refrain from my initial thoughts and let you go on.
I think there is actually some credence to this kind of weird, maybe little conspiracy that's been going around that they're trying to beat PMDG to the punch, right? I don't think it's going to happen, but it's kind of funny that they basically have gone out and said that we are going to do an invitation only alpha, and that alpha, per their Discord, means that major things will be there. So VNAV and the radios, and they said that's all going to be there. But some of the kind of nicer things like quality of life, CPDLC, that sort of stuff is not going to be there. Take that for what it's worth. Take the fact that they're doing an invitation only closed alpha for what it's worth. I am not really, look at it here. I'm just sorry. Like, the proportions of this aircraft do not look right. I wish we had cropped a picture of a real one. All Flight Factor products have had proportionality issues. You can see it in the 757, which is probably one of their best looking products, at least exterior, but they have proportionality issues. And it seems like, they really tout this, it's this EFB integration with the crew integration, and they've really focused that, and they really haven't shown us anything about the systems, sounds, cockpit stuff, and the 777, as you and I both know, is a highly, incredibly complex machine. It's a highly automated machine. It's deceptively simple from an operator standpoint, but it is very complex, right? Because that's the trade-off. You either have a very, very complex aircraft to operate because you're doing most of the things, but the systems are very simple, or you have an incredibly easy to operate aircraft, C Airbus, C Boeing from the 777 on, but there's a whole lot of automation in the background that is making all of that stuff happen, right?
Yep.
And so
they're very sophisticated.
This is a very, very sophisticated aircraft, right? And it's one of those things that, from the offerings that we have now from Flight Factor, the 777 that we have from them. And again, this is
I don't have that one, so I'm gonna.
I don't have it either. But from what I've seen from it, it's just not like
It's not
why.
there.
And I know that their pricing, they already said it's going to be similar to what they've already released, which
Is a lot.
is a lot. It's near PMDG level, but I'm telling you, it's not going to be a PMDG level product. and I hope
I don't know.
no, I know I'm going out there and saying that, but I just given past experience, this is one of those things that's like, this is a wait and see.
So
You
here,
know?
my obviously we don't know. We can't be certain. They've definitely talked a good game on it, but they've had a 777 available for many years. My understanding is it has never reached anywhere close to PMDG levels, and I'll say, as someone who has spent a fair amount of time in the PMDG 777, and especially recently in anticipation of it coming to Microsoft Flight Simulator, putting it up in P3D. The PMDG one, as good as it is, frankly, probably needed some work that they hadn't gone back and done either, compared to, say, the 747 or the 737 in P3D. That's all I mean. But from what I have seen of the Flight Factor 777 in X-Plane, it was a far cry from a PMDG product. Okay, that's one mark. But I've also had the impression that even from an A to B perspective, it was still kind of meh. And if and I have their A350, and if that is somewhat similar to their 777, then this 777, this V2 that they're doing, that they want to charge significant money for, kind of the highest level tier, the same kind of money you'd be paying for the Fellis, the same kind of money you'd be paying for a Tolus. It had better be better than what I've seen from some of these other products.
Yep.
I guess we'll see. I'm looking at the model, and I won't bring it back up, but just looking at the model they put up, I'm like, if that's your promo picture, I would say my gut reaction was almost like, this is going to sound silly. Maybe I will bring it back up, because I have to tell you what my gut reaction was when I saw it. You'll be like, wow, Dan, it's not very nice of you, but that's fine. Let's see here. Here we go. So I'm bringing it back up. Just for a hot moment, I thought somebody started modeling like an A350, but maybe they wanted to make an A38. Like, something is too chunky and too short.
Thank you. Yes. So look at the aft fuselage, and you look at the forward fuselage. It doesn't. It's not proportional. So the 777 is actually, in my opinion, the 200 is the most proportional aircraft I think that's ever been made. In my opinion, I think
along with the 747-200, I think that 747-200 looks just freaking amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I hear you.
And so there's and the wing box right here, this fairing that's right here, it just, I don't know if it's the livery itself, it just doesn't look right. I don't know if the wing's sitting too high. I don't know what's going on, but something about this, and I remember, because we were talking with one of our friends on the server, not our server, about the nose. And I was quick when they first put the nose out. I was like, that's wrong. There's something about
they fixed that. Supposedly
they did fix it, apparently, supposedly, but it was like, okay. But I think we beat a dead horse on the Flight Factor.
All right. So
version 2.
All right. So one of the other
wait and see.
Okay. So one of the other little twists this week is that there was a release from a developer who has recently put out a string of products that met with an even greater string of vitriol directed to them.
Vitriol is a good word.
And that is Captain Sim.
What?
Right. Or as they might say, he who shall not be named, so to speak. But however, they recently put out a new plane. It's a C-130, and oddly enough, it seems to be getting some positive attention now.
But Dulles, they already have a C-130. What's different about this one?
I don't know. You tell me, because I have to say I saw Captain Sim and I immediately put it out of my mind. But you have told me, in fact, that wait a minute, hang on just a second. Maybe Captain Sim is trying to reclaim some of its more appreciated status back when they were developing for P3D. So what's the story?
Yes. So the story here is that this is a C-130 hotel. Um, and the difference is yes, they already had a C-130, but it was a external model only. And
Okay.
so we've gone through this. And again, this is all rumor. I've never been able to substantiate it, but sometime around 2020, right before the release of Microsoft Flight Simulator, it is rumored that there was a mass exodus of developers from Captain Sim. This is about the time they released the GE and the GE Freighter for the 767-300 GE and GE Freighter for P3D. All right. I have their P3D 767. The Pratt & Whitney's actually good. Like, it's not a bad plane at all. I mean, it's not amazing.
I have it. I admit I really haven't flown it much.
Yeah, and so
bought it for $10 though, so I can't argue.
Yes, they had one of their $10 sales. So
yes.
The supposed difference is if you've been simming for a while, at least the last 2 decades, like I have, Captain Sim actually, starting in Flight Simulator 9, I want to say they released their first version of the 757, if I want to remember correctly. They actually made good quality A to B. They've always been great at models, by the way. They have always had an amazing modeling artist. Their models have always looked good, even back at FSX.
I think it's one of the things that has helped them sell well in Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Yes, is that they have good models. And so they had a really good reputation. I'm not saying they're not PMD. They were never PMDG. I don't even think they ever claimed to be PMDG, but they had good products. They had a 727. They had a 707. They had a B-52. They had a C-130, which was one of their kind of like hallmark FSX products. And it looks like, I saw a couple of, I think Into the Blue Simulations was the one guy I was watching that had a review of it. Mm-hmm. And whose
channel, by the way, is very good if you haven't checked it out.
And so that reviewer was like, like almost like a color me impressed, like maybe they are returning again, and maybe this is a return to some former glory that they had before. I haven't gotten it. I don't know. Because like it's not the C-130 I would like personally. I'd like the Juliet model, which has got glass cockpit. And I know people are like, oh no, you don't need it, but you have to literally you have to fly this thing slant whiskey. So what does that mean? It's got no, it's VOR, right? And so Microsoft Flight Simulator does not have the best VOR station simulation, so that can kind of get a little dicey. When you're talking about flying VOR to VOR and doing that sort of thing. But I'm glad if they're going to a level where they're going to go back to where they're simulating normal operations, then good for them. Okay. Because I think it's really easy, flight sim community, it's really easy to just write somebody off, right? Like FS Labs. And I'm not saying like not trying to bring that up, but that's
write them off. Really what do you mean?
I
haven't written off FS Labs. They just don't have anything to tell us.
No, but people have written them off because
of because I got you. Yeah.
Yes.
You're right. You're right. Of course. I wasn't thinking about that.
Yeah. And so my point is that it's very easy in this community you get slighted one time and you get written off. Right. And so you hear the things like, oh, people have funny little names for Captain Sim and stuff like that. And maybe this is a return to former lore. So I wish the best for them. If this is what they want to do, they want to make the A to B products again. There's a lot of simulators that are simmers that's all they're going to do is A to B. They're never going to simulate a failure. I rarely simulate failures. I don't have time for it. So like,
I don't mind turning on service-based failures, and if something happens, it happens. That's fine. Mm-hmm. I don't spend a lot of time specifically in simulator failure. Well, I guess we'll see what happens with that. I think one of the big issues there is that they have so many products that they have released, including charging significant amount of money for liveries that have really upset.
And that's another thing, by the way, they will charge for liveries for that too. So they haven't gotten rid of that part of it, I guess.
Okay, well, all right. So one of the other big stories this week, and we're gonna talk about this presentation in more detail in our feature segment on CPDLC, PDC, ACARS, is that Synaptic released a video focusing on avionics updates or where they are in that process for their A220, which initially started as a freeware product, and they have since changed gears. They've allied with AnyBuilds, and they're going to bring an A220 pay product. But the video that they presented looked very promising. And I know, Felix, you've had a chance to really dig into it a little bit, and
Yes.
Maybe you could tell us a little more about where they are.
Yeah, so they've actually developed their own what they call the aircraft cockpit emulator. So they've actually taken everything they're going to put in the cockpit as far as the screens, the displays themselves, and they've developed it outside of the sim. So my guess is they're going to put it back in at some time. But this allows them to do these things outside of the sim without actually having to be in the sim in order to develop. So it frees up some resources. It allows them just to kind of focus on that aspect of it. One of the key things they talked about was obviously the CPDLC,
right, which we're going to delve into.
We're going to talk about, but the other one was they're making a checklist feature in which they're going to open up the ability for users to make their own electronic checklist that can be pre-verified. It's not like you can just do whatever you want. You can make this that it's correct based on like the actual operational philosophy of the aircraft, because some operators have different things for whatever. For instance, some operators might have they might mention the flaps on the checklist every third item. But it's
or whatever it is.
Or whatever it is. It's a company specific thing. So I think this is a kind of a huge step where we're going to see a lot more playability with what they're doing with the cockpit. It looks very promising as far as what they're trying to do. Obviously, they talked about things like the sensed items, which we were just talking about the 777, it does the same thing.
It has
sensed item. It has sensed items, which means what it's based on the into whatever the switch or whatever handle lever, whatever the position will make it white or green. White being that it needs to be done, green means it's already done, right
with the check mark and everything.
And they show that you can override it, you can do it. So they were really highlighting this kind of the CPDLC. Again, they were really highlighting this electronic checklist, which would be great for VAs. It's going to be great for VAs that are going to be able to do their own checklists now. It's going to be great for livery makers who maybe you're not a part of a VA, but you like to fly a specific airline, and you really like a livery that kind of is exactly, as much as they can to that airline's, specification. I know PMDG is really, really, they've always kind of had a hallmark of like having all the little doodad options. You can choose between the Boeing and the Cable's radios, for instance. And some really, really granular kind of like option specific stuff that airlines would choose. And so this kind of will give you the livery maker the option to customize the checklist based on a specific airline SOP. Excuse me. So I think it's going to be huge. I think what they're doing is good. And to me, what this speaks more to is that this is going to be a very, very detailed, possibly next level product offering, similar to what we would expect from a high fidelity add-on, that they're going the extra mile to try and deliver a really, really top tier product, which is exciting. And their partnership with AnyBuilds shows that maybe they want to get it done, maybe in the next year and maybe not in the next 5 years, because that's the thing.
One can hope.
We have the oh my gosh, I just had it, the iron triangle Venn diagram. You know what I'm talking about? Good, fast, cheap. And there's no overlap.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things where the thing with freeware is, and we see this with fly by wire. How long ago did they announce their A380? Right. And
it'll get here when it gets here. Yeah.
It'll get here when it gets here. But when you have a publisher like an AnyBuilds, and other people do this too. Just Flight does this. Aerosoft does this. They publish. And the reason for that is now the developer can have some more resources in order to speed things up. And that's better for us as the customer, and that we get the product sooner. And hopefully we get the product in a better state because they have the resources to do things correctly. And so I think that's what Synoptic wanted. That's what they're going for. At the end of the day, why not get paid? If you're going to do something of that quality, why not get paid? Because that's exactly how I would treat it. Look, I got to keep my lights on, right? Like
Right.
all this stuff, costs money. And I think that, we have the realistic conversation of, they wanted to get paid for their work. I don't have a problem with that. If you're going to deliver a top tier product that I'm going to run in my simulator and feel very, very happy about, then go all for it.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that brings us to our main topic of the week, which is the state of CPDLC, PDC, ACARs, and the fact that the Synaptic video from the other day highlighted that there is now a cross-developer working group
Yes.
that is planning on implementing the successor to Hoppy.
Yep.
And that successor will be based on the ICAO protocols for CPDLC and PDC. One thing they did not discuss in there, but which I wouldn't be surprised at all to find is also part of it, is the ability to enhance and improve potential ACAR style communication as well. So I guess, Felix, what do you think about the current state of CPDLC, and how do you see this shaping up for us as the users?
So, of course, just a little primer on CPDLC. CPDLC is controller, pilot, data link communication. So think of CPDLC as SMS, right? It's a text service. Okay. So you usually in most aircraft, the COM3 radio, which is usually on the overhead, it's not actually on.
Right. It's hiding somewhere.
It's hiding somewhere.
Right.
Is set to what's called data. And so that allows the aircraft to send data, which is, in this case is text messages, and if it's ACAR specific things, they could do load sheets or whatever. But the whole point is CPDLC is a way for controllers and pilots to communicate no matter where they are. And so this becomes really useful when you're flying over the ocean, because if you've ever heard HF radio squelch, it's not something you want to listen to for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
Not for 5 seconds.
Not for 5 seconds. And so what these guys would do before is they would have what's called a cell cal, right? A select call, a cell cal check, right? And you hear a bong, and then you would tune the HF frequency and you'd
start talking. If you can.
Shanwick radio, blah, 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 answering cell cal. And then, you would start whatever the request is. CPDLC allows you to not have to do any of that. So it started out kind of, I guess, in the Pacific, and it did all that. And so what is the state of it now? It's very hodgepodge. So for the last 2 decades, Hoppy's been out since like 2003, I think, or maybe even longer. So for that long, we've had what's known as Hoppy, which I think you were telling me the guy's name, Hoppenbauer.
Yes,
it's based on.
Yes, it's a guy who developed it.
It's a guy
on his own as this service, and it has picked up a wide adoption. But yes, that's how it got the name.
That's how it got the name Hoppy, right? And so Hoppy CPDLC is actually not CPDLC at all. What it is it's free text that the client or whatever you're using, if you're using CRC or E-stars and by the way, those are controller side things. So CRC, VCRC, and I think it's ERAM or E-stars. That's what, if you were a controller on VATSIM, that's actually the program you use to control. All right. And so there are specific sub programs in there that allow you to do PDC and stuff like that. And so that's,
right, which we should also talk about.
Yeah.
And so PDC for those is a pre-departure clearance, which is different than CPDLC.
Yes.
Although it's all relying on the data link capabilities of an airplane to make it happen.
Yes. That is the key, is the data link. This is the key to the whole thing. And so Hoppy was free text. And so any add-on maker that has used integrated Hoppy, and it's mostly Airbus. Like actually, I think it's like almost exclusively Airbus with the DFDC. That's what they call it. The little.
It's a DCDU.
DCDU. Thank you. The DCDU, which is the little box right on the where the lower
I think it's
ECAM.
data communications display unit or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, and so the DCDU
Actually,
is
we have a picture of a
yeah,
DC
exactly.
DU. So hang on one second here. I'll pull that up so you guys can see what we're talking about.
The DCDU.
Here we go.
Yep, that's the DCDU. So as you can see, I have this is actually my picture in the this is the Phoenix, and this is what it looks like when it's integrated. The problem is that Phoenix or Flight Sim Labs or whoever does Hoppy trying to integrate it into their aircraft. The Challenger has it as well. So scratch the whole Airbus only. So I guess
Right. I mean, a number of planes have it, but
they do. But
Airbus is a big one. Yeah.
the big point is that there's no protocol. There is no standard protocol for this. So any developer that has had to integrate or uses Hoppy to do the CPDLC piece in their add-on has had to come up with their own protocol to get this stuff segmented, because how Hoppy works is it just sends free text, right? There's no in real ICAO protocol CPDLC. There is an actual structure to how the texts are sent and received, right?
Yes.
Hoppy is complete free text. And so, what we have right now is we have a lot of integration, but there's no standard protocol, and that leads to kind of not a wide adoption of it, right? Because you have to get either the control have something made and the plane has to have something made, and they both got to figure out how to, and the add-on maker has to figure out how to get them all to talk correctly. And so that's where we have things like Easy CPDLC, which was made by Josh Seagrave, which I don't know if he is a controller at Houston Center. I know he visits Houston Center. I've definitely, especially in the morning, which is I think like afternoon for him. I see that. Hey, Driver and Pops, good to see you guys in here. And
thank you all.
And it's one of those things where Easy CPDLC is.
And this is Easy CPDLC for those of you who haven't seen
the thing. It is an external client, just like VATSIM, that allows you. So you see, you have the Telex, and then you have the ATC, and that's how you connect to the ATCs. And you can do free text, and you can also do. You could do the structured messages as well.
Right. You can do PDC and CPDLC.
Yes.
Using this.
Yes. Point is that there's no structure to this either. This is still using, there is structure, but it's still using Hoppy.
Right. It's organizing it in a way that will work with VATSIM.
Yes.
But effectively, it's still relying on the same infrastructure.
Yes.
So one of the things that's different now, and Synaptic was highlighting, and here's kind of what this looks like here. This is from their video.
Yep.
So, what we're seeing here is the logon status. So notice that it has VATSIM noted there. It'll work with iVal2, and who knows what else it may end up working with at some point.
Probably Pilot Edge, I would imagine.
Yeah, you would think that Pilot Edge would be a good option there. And we could see up at the top, it's, they're in the CPDLC menu, and you can see there's a message log, settings, requests, etc. And what it's doing now is looking at a protocol that is based on the official standards that are out there and from ICAO, and presumably in this scenario, or at least it's their intent, I believe, to offer the same specific cluster of features organized under the same message protocols that are used in the real world. If I got that summed up about right, in terms of the practical element.
So that's what they said. They said they and this, again, we have this working group of developers, large developers. Considering that any Synaptic is now partnered with any builds, I would be willing to bet that any builds is involved in this. And they said a group of larger developers. So that, and again, pure speculation, but that could be people like Phoenix. That could be people like PMDG. I know Randazzo said that he didn't like, I specifically asked him the question about the CPDLC integration and with Hoppy. But he said that he didn't like Hoppy. They're going to use it, but hopefully that there's something that comes along. And so maybe, I don't know. Is that an allusion to them working? Who knows? But
Right.
I know that all these developers do want this. Because this is exactly how it is, right? Like this is,
Yes.
you're in an A220. This is how you're going to request for an altitude, right? You can put an altitude block. You can step
Right, and you can
at
see that right there.
Yeah,
Right? They've
and
got
you
a
can-
block, and they've got their reasons, and
Yeah,
you can see it's
exactly.
coming in below that in terms of what the message is actually going to say for
Yeah,
them.
so you can preview the message and then send it, right? So you can do all this, you can preview what you're going to send, and then you can send it out. And the thing is, this protocol is going to work with all the clients that they're going to be able to. So VATSIM, iVal, and again, I don't know if Pilot Edge. I would assume maybe Pilot Edge.
I would think so. Why would? Yeah.
And so it's one of those things that this is kind of something that the US right now, we're kind of late to the game, but they, in the real world, they have been rolling out CPDLC since mid last year. I think Jax and somebody else, so that's Jax Center, were one of the first to roll it out, but it's weird because it's still voice call in. So you check in and then you check in via CPDLC.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
But the point there being, one, it's even in the U.S. it's now becoming, the expectation it's going to become a standard. In Europe, it's been a standard for a while. I mean, you can't run a commercial operation without CPDLC. Most of the VATSIM controllers in Europe will have it as an option as well. And in the VATSIM US side, they've now got the Auto PDC, which is pre-departure clearance. Now, Auto PDC is not CPDLC. CPDLC is a specific connection between the plane and the controller that I believe it's authenticated is part of the way that works, so that the it's verified. But yes. PDC is a way for air traffic control to get you your clearance, and I think for most amateur folks like us who are on the sim, clearance is one of the more complicated pieces in terms of getting it, reading it back, and here with PDC, you're getting all of your clearance details.
Let's see if you can see that. That's
me. I can't. It's a little blurry, but you got craft written out there or something.
I don't use craft, but that was
whatever.
The whole point is I've written down my clearance for
it's fine
the other day. Yeah.
Yeah, but that PDC is putting that for you directly in text that you can easily work with and then accept or decline if you have some issue. And some places that were real busy online, particularly some place like Heathrow, being able to I use that, it's always busy there, or Gatwick. It's super convenient to be getting PDCs. And during Cross the Pond the other week, which I participated coming out of Heathrow, it was great. I took easy CPDLC because I was flying the PMDG 777 and P3D, which doesn't have any of that. And I used CPDLC to get my PDC. I used easy CPDLC to get my PDC, which was very convenient. There wasn't any CPDLC coverage after that. I understand in some regions, like France, I guess it was up, but a lot of places it wasn't. One of the issues that arises with the current system is that I gather it's not that difficult to overwhelm Hoppy. And so, because I don't think anyone's really paying for it except for him, possibly. I'm not even sure text isn't really heavy in terms of using up bandwidth or whatever, but as a practical matter during a big event, who knows what happens? Sometimes the messages just go off into the ether.
Sure.
And presumably, I would think with this group of developers that part of the plan is to have a back end that actually makes this work. So I'll say from my perspective, I think having CPDLC and having more realistic immersion factors is a big one. For me, I'm even more excited about more ubiquitous PDC as well. But I think one of the other things I find very potentially interesting here is what somebody could do with ACARs.
Yes.
So for those who aren't 100% sure, so ACAR stands for like Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System.
Yes.
But what ACARS is really, used for is company side operations.
Yes.
And so, for example, they may be transmitting your, flight plan information, performance information, weight and balance information. Every airline has, different levels of ACARS. As I understand it, something like Ryanair, ACARS isn't really a thing. And for others, it's 100% how they operate.
Yeah,
Because
there's a lot of all the U.S. airlines. ACARS is all the big three:
yeah,
American, United, Delta.
Delta, yeah,
ACARS is how they're doing everything.
right.
Yeah.
And where that opens some opportunities is twofold in my mind. One is developers
Yes.
from the plane side implementing some of these features, where and FS Labs has done something like this now in their A320 series, where you can request performance information, and the way it's transmitted to you is in I gather, a fairly typical ACARS format, where you get it like a message. Now, of course, we all know that in practice, what all they're really doing is doing a performance thing that pops up as a message, But as a practical matter, it presents a lot of interesting opportunities. One, for developers to implement ACARS functionality, or to have these kind of messaging concepts going back and forth if there's a good protocol and they've worked a little back end to provide that realism element for you. The second, and I think is even a bigger one, is for virtual airlines to get in on this, right?
Yeah.
Because they may have their own protocols, their own performance metrics, their own weight and balance, passenger information, just things that add interest and into that. So, for example, a lot of virtual airlines have got their own ACARS client, hypothetically, that mostly just tracks your plane. But imagine if
Yeah.
it was more interactive and there
Sure.
was a protocol to do that. So, from my perspective, I think the notion that we have a lot of developers working towards a next gen on all of these data link pieces
Yeah.
tells me that we have a bright future with these kinds of options in these planes and providing another level of realism.
So I think my biggest thing, at least with the ACARS, is absolutely is definitely the company side, and I think my biggest thing with this is more so. I think this is we're gonna start to see the end of what I like to call. So I think the NAT track system, and specifically the Oceanic side of VATSIM, has always
Mm-hmm.
been lacking, and I think
Yeah.
I haven't participated in CPDLC. I have participated in CPDLC numerous
Yes.
times, but I
Yeah.
haven't participated in CTP across the pond the last couple of times, because I've just found it's not really interesting, at least from like flying over the ocean. So like they treat it as if it's VHF, which is completely erroneous. So it's not, because you can't VHF communicate. It's because VHF is line of sight, right? It's not. It's not
Yeah.
over the ocean. It's not HF. And CPDLC is kind of that stop. Is that nice option that allows you, again, you don't have to hear the HF and stuff like that.
Right.
But you can't. They don't do pause reps. That's my thing. They don't.
Well,
So they're doing VHF. They're not doing pause reps.
Well, that's
So,
because I think the way they've got it organized right now is they use NAT tracks to give you the clearance, which is semi CPDLC ish. Then they have you do the check in, which would be HF, but they have you do it VHF, right?
mhm.
And then they give you the cell cal, and then that's about it. So, in that respect, I think it is a lot like current Oceanic, where they're really not doing position reports
Yeah.
like they used to, or if they're doing them via CPDLC.
Yeah, but that's more my point.
But
Is that
it's a hodgepodge, is what it
it's a,
is.
it's not
Yeah,
it's not the standard protocol, right?
right. It's a
And so
hodgepodge.
it's a hodgepodge, and
Yeah.
so that's more my point, is that you're going to get them. Hopefully, VATSIM is like, okay, we're going to do this for Oceanic, because this is more reminiscent of the real world, right? This is
Right.
what they're doing in the real world when they're crossing the ocean, and CPDLC makes it easy to check in, because some of those airports, like if you're at Heathrow, you're gonna be within your 30-minute window as soon as you take off. So you
Um,
know,
yeah, it's a little further, but yeah, no, I get your
yeah,
point.
and if
Um,
you're at Dublin, or if you're anything
yeah,
like that, you're gonna be in your window pretty quick to
you will.
need to check in and request that Oceanic clearance, and so um it's one of those things that, I hope that that's a part of it, is kind of reinventing, how we do, um, as far as that CPDLC side of Oceanic. And of course, there's the larger, and like you said, PDCs, which is more ubiquitous. It'd be really nice if you just got it in the aircraft. You got the little bong, and then
Yep,
you see it, and
100%.
and
Right, it's not coming through the vPilot client and
no,
all of that.
exactly,
It's giving you that realistic feel, which you can get right now in something like the Phoenix or the
Mhm.
FSL, the FS Labs. Some of them do support that, but it would be really nice if we're getting more of that. The other thing with VATSIM, I think, is that they it's a volunteer organization, so they don't do everything quickly. But I mean, I think we've seen that they are slowly creeping their way towards some more realistic elements. So there's more people who support CPDLC. They've got the 8.33 kilohertz radio spacing in Europe, which unfortunately has rendered some on planes a little tougher to use, but they've got that. There's a whole variety of things that they're working on. Even
Yeah.
NatTrax, in a way, is part of that effort. So, I mean, I'm kind of hopeful that they'll do that. I have not used iVal, so I don't know how they do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
One of the other things that might be kind of interesting with the CPDLC Oceanic piece is I wonder also if it might open up uh, across the Pacific as a realistic, maybe not as an event, but just in terms of maybe even someone just controlling that once in a while, something
So
like that.
so so Ben A out of ZLA
ZLA, yeah.
does
Ben
Ben
A
A.
out of ZLA. It's a
That's right,
mouthful.
Ben
Yeah,
A. It's a he's a good controller. I like him. He does a lot of top down out there.
yeah.
He actually, for his hours, there's a certain amount of hours he has to control Oakland,
Okay,
Oceanic. I think because
okay,
he does NorCal and SoCal,
okay.
and there's a couple of hours he has to maintain Oakland Oceanic, and so it's funny that you say that, because it's funny. Maybe you do allude. I would never want to do a cross Pacific event because nothing, unless you're going to Hawaii. It's like 5 hours, but
Yeah, well,
but
whatever. But you get my
yeah,
point. Yeah, it
yeah,
doesn't
that
have
would
to be an
be
event. Just although I don't know, maybe I'd do it. It might be fun once. Like
yeah
anything.
once, yeah,
Well, we talk about it's funny because we talk about long hauls and all these other things, but I think the more immersive options you have, the more things you might want to go try.
sure,
I think that's always the case. I you know, like you've been trying out the TBM. You're flying some things that you wouldn't go fly in a 737.
yeah,
Same yesterday. I took out the Comanche and just did a spin around Maui. Why not? And I think if someone told me, hey, you want to try out CPDLC communications going from San Francisco to Sydney or something, I was like, yeah, why not? Hint, hint. 777 come soon, along with the captain's edition of SFO, so we can make that flight. Just saying. Just crossing
Mir,
my
we're
fingers.
waiting, we're
Crossing
waiting,
my
Mir.
fingers. Right. Yes, Mir knows we're excited. For those of you who don't know, Mir runs Flightbeam. He is Flightbeam, and he is working on KSFO Captain's Edition. He's put some previews out. They look pretty good. Um, but I think that it'll be interesting to see how these developers progress with this. A lot of times when you have a group and a committee, all you end up with is another group and committee to do the thing that the group and the committee was going to do. And so you just have 5 versions of the same thing.
Gotta love
There,
bureaucracy.
right. But again, I don't know that this qualifies as bureaucracy. We're not sure who's in the group. It would be interesting to know that if any developer would like to come on and talk more about that.
Yeah,
Consider this to be an open invitation to do that, um, unless it's that top secret. But I guess it's not, since it was just discussed
it
yesterday.
can be. I mean, it's an open protocol that has real world implication. Is from the real
Right.
world, so I don't see any, like,
Right. Or
unless
I'm
there's
making
some.
I think we may be making an assumption it's an open protocol, but I assume it is. We
I
might be
mean,
wrong. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But
well,
my impression is
it's
it was.
probably it's probably not. You can't get into it and update it. It's not like Apple,
No,
UI
no.
and
but I meant, that
iOS.
honestly, if somebody told me the only way we can make this work is there's, some fee to be a subscriber, maybe you do it. It's a possibility.
I mean, if so,
Can
here's
someone put it in my Navigraph subscription,
so
please?
let's I guess I'll humor you on this vein of that we're talking about. The only way I do that is if CPDLC and PDC becomes more widespread.
Yeah, more widespread and more useful, and 100 other things. These are all
Yeah.
big challenges. All big challenges. And
But it's
so,
nice to see. It's nice to see that people are trying to get this into a more realistic, immersion. It's better for all of us. It's better for all of us. We're doing flight simulation. This is a huge part of it.
yep.
It's been in the real world for decades at this point, and so it's very nice to see people are making an honest, I guess, attempt to try and get a standardization of protocol, and make this work.
Yep. Well, we've come up on our hour. And I think we've covered this one for the moment. But as I say, we would love to have you on. Now, for those of you who've tuned in, we really, really thank you. Is anyone still with us?
I hope it's.
I don't know. Does anyone got a question?
Yeah, exactly. Any questions?
Okay. So as always, if you've tuned in and watched, thank you so much. I hope you'll hit the like button, subscribe, please. We'd love to have you here so you know when our next one is. And in that vein, I'll also mention that we are a media partner with FS Expo.
Yes.
And there's a link down below if you'd like to register for Expo. It just lets them know that you found it here.
No, hold on.
What?
Oh my God. We have a message from Driver, which is, what are your feelings on the TFDI MD-11 progress? And what I would like to say to you, Driver, because I know exactly who you are, is that's bait.
That's bait. Yeah. How about this? I'll answer that instead of you.
Yeah.
How's that?
Okay, that's fine.
I'll take the bait. I will say that I think that the notion that in 2 days the TFDI MD-11 will be feature complete, as they have suggested, might be somewhat wishful thinking. And if it is feature complete, I don't know that having a feature that you've programmed that may not really actually work yet counts. So I still suspect that we'll be waiting a while for all of the alpha level bug ironing and flight model issues before we really have a beta and an actual release. So I think there's a little frustration and disappointment, but at the same time, I continue to remain hopeful that in the long run, and it might be a while, we'll have an MD-11 that that everyone's excited about flying.
Yeah,
I can feels as a good finished product.
I can tell you that the next update, if they do the flight model stuff that they're talking about, I will fly it. That's just period. If people I know are like, you know what, because somebody I do trust and respect said, you know what, this thing's not bad A to B. I said, okay. And they said it has potential. I said, okay. If they do the flight model stuff, I get my SimBrief integration, I'll fly it. I have no problem doing that. But I think that, you and I know other people are a little frustrated with the progress of what's going on. And that's okay. Flight sim development is what it is. And I'm not really trying to go down a rabbit hole of, is TFDI this, is it that? I think they're talented. I just wish that maybe they would prioritize some things more than what they are prioritizing, but you know what? I can't make those decisions for them. And I want the best for the product because guess what? It's an MD-11. It's an iconic aircraft. And I think it deserves, the best effort to get it in the sim and to get it flyable and for people to, enjoy it. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
So I'm glad we got a question on that. So for FS Expo, if you'd like to register, it's down below, as I mentioned. And that brings us, by the way, that next week our guest will be Evan Rader from FS Expo to come on and talk about Expo. Evan's also a real world pilot, so we're going to ask him about that. So I hope you'll check in and see that. But there's a lot going on at Expo this year. They haven't announced every vendor that's going to be there either. So maybe we'll ask Evan if he's got some updates on that front as well. and it should be a fun one. We're going to do it a little later in the day because well, Evan's a real world pilot and he's working, so we'll be on a little later. We'll let you know when that is. As always, we'll post in the usual locations, and you'll get a notification here if you are subscribed and invest for notifications.
And if you are a guest, if you do tune in and you're a developer or you think you have something to offer real world and you're in flight simulation involved, if you'd like to be a guest of the show, just message us at our email. We have an email; it's the same email as this, and we'll get that in the link and everything. Just message us, and we'll try to see if we can get you on, because we want. One of the goals of this is to get the real world with the flight sim to show that they're both are applicable and they kind of lead into each other and they help each other. So
yeah. And for those of you who didn't see Hawks, who was on with
Yes.
us in the last episode, he's a perfect example of someone who was involved in flight sim, who made it into the real world. He's on the ATC side, but he also flies. It's a great interview.
Yep.
Go back and watch it. Hope you enjoy it. And thank you all for tuning in again.
Yes, thank you very
We'll
much.
see you soon.
See you soon.